Hello there, everybody. You're very welcome to tonight's webinar. My name is Owen O'Leary, and in 30 minutes, I'm going to explain to you why it's very important to try and use some of your Christmas break to revise maths. And not only am I going to tell you why it's important, I'm going to show you the most effective way to do it using the Maths Tutor. Okay, let's get started. Hello, everybody. You're very welcome to tonight's webinar called Making the Most of Your Christmas Break with the mathstutor.ie. My name is Owen O'Leary. I'm smiling here because I know the title is kind of almost a bit ironic, isn't it? Someone here who's better at English than me would say there's something a bit funny about having Christmas break, and I'm advising you to do some more work on maths during that break. But I know from the survey, I looked at the people who filled it in earlier, the most common cohort of students here are Leaving Cert students. There are a lot of fifth-year students here as well, and then there are third-year students. Okay, so a lot of you are facing very important exams, and the fifth-year students who don't have pre's and mocks in the coming weeks, well, this time next year you'll be in that boat. So there's a couple of things here I want to tell you. So the mathstutor.e is what I'm going to be talking about tonight. The Maths Tutor is part of the tuition center. So that's why sometimes you'll see that you'll get emails from which will revert to both the mathstutor.e and the tuition center. So the mathstutor.e is Ireland's leading online system for maths. It's been around since 2011. It is definitely the most comprehensive library of videos. They're organized both sequentially in that, like, you could teach yourself the whole of maths from first year maths all the way up to Leaving Cert, in order, the same way your teacher would do it, or you could do it by exam year. So you can, every exam question that's come up since 2012, and even some earlier parts from pre-questions are there, and you could use them to become perfectly prepared for the state exams. We definitely hope that we complement what you learn in school, so the in-school teaching and learning. The Maths Tutor merged with the Tuition Center in the summer 2023. The Tuition Center is mainly it's live online lessons. So basically, we got the best of both worlds, the best of online and then on demand. So you could say the online live is the tuition center, and the on demand is for the mathstutor.e. So why do students need all this extra help in maths? I teach maths every day in a school called Hamilton High School down here in Bandon, County Cork. Any student who's with me would know that I'm in there every day. I'm hardly ever missing. I'm in there working hard. The students are working hard. They have all these extra resources, and still a lot of them will need to go for some extra support in there. And why is that? Why is that? Why is that the same everywhere? Well, one thing that's kind of a major feature at the moment is the COVID-19 learning loss. That students, ye 6 years now at the moment, ye were in second year when COVID struck. Just such an important time for learning maths. Inside there, you're doing your fundamentals of algebra, your fundamentals of trigonometry, your fundamentals of probability and stats. And if those things get lost and get cloudy, it's just very difficult to repair that, within a situation in class where you have to, as a teacher, you just have to keep going because there's so much to cover. You'll notice that the students themselves might notice as much as the teacher, but there's certainly something called what I call a cultural shift in attendance after the COVID crisis, that students just miss more days. It's just a simple fact. It's so obvious inside the classroom, and you hear it in every classroom. And any time a student misses a lesson for a match or for a sickness or for a holiday or for anything, it's something more to catch up on. There is a difficulty of having, in relation to the number of maths teachers coming out of the colleges every year. There is a shortage. It's very pronounced in certain parts of the country, and so it is hard to, get around that. And with all that, you see the length and the depth of the syllabus is just so much in maths You know, if we were in America, you like what we call maths, right? They would be looking up at their timetable and they'd be saying, will I study calculus? That'll be one subject. Will I study statistics? That'll be a different subject. But we just call it one subject. It's called maths. So it's very wide, it's a very broad subject, but it's very deep as well. There's an awful lot to cover. Oftentimes, teachers would say to me, and I know it myself, we got a CBA to cover now in second year, and spend a couple of weeks doing that because of all sorts of stuff. There's just less time on the timetable for a lot of students for studying maths over the course of their 6 years. So the combination of those factors mean that students just simply are behind where they would have been in September 2019. So you take any the first year sitting in front of me this year, they're definitely not in the same place where the first years were in September 2019. I look at the sixth years and they're not in the same place where the sixth year students were in September 2019 either. And there's just kind of no solution to that because of the loss during COVID. But the Leaving Cert exam was as tough as ever. I'm sure some of you you all heard the controversy from last year, in paper one. Paper one really was a stinker. It just really was very difficult paper. And a lot of students were really thrown by it. So there is some extra choice in the Leaving Cert. Thankfully, it's still there for this year's student. However, the exam is just as tough, and you really have to know. You really have to know. Okay, inside in the exam itself, you can leave out some parts, but when you're preparing for it, you really can't leave out much because the topics overlap. So students need to spend more time working on their maths to bridge that gap. So the gap is there. There's no doubt that the gap is there, and somehow it needs to be bridged. So students definitely need to spend more time uh, working on their um, working on the maths to bridge that gap. Now, the maths tutor can definitely help. So that's what I'm here to explain today. So how is it going to help? Well, here's the first thing. Why do I have this webinar on at this moment? Okay. Why are we here the week before we break up for Christmas? And I'm explaining it to you. Because the Christmas break is really important. Now you're looking at a screen here, right? This survey came from the results of these students sat the Leaving Cert in 2022. They did a thing with me in the tuition center called the 21-day challenge, which we do just on the run up to the Leaving Cert. The 21 nights beforehand, we're online for an hour. So from the students who answered this survey, and they answered it after they got their Leaving Cert results, these were the grades they received in their maths mock. Okay. So in 2022, you can see, what can we see? From 145, one of them had got a H1. What is it? 16 of them had got a H8. Okay. So you can see the grades. That's what they got in their maths mock. And then this is what they got in their Leaving Cert. One of them got a H6 and everyone else did higher. So these people all did higher level Leaving Cert maths. Okay. Because the 145 of them who responded all had got these grades at higher level Leaving Cert maths. So 33 of them had got a H1. Only one of them got a H1 in their maths mocks. So the guys and girls in sixth year maths, in a few weeks after Christmas, if you want to type it into the chat there, you can let me know. When are you doing your pre-exams? Like, when do they start for the students and Leaving Cert higher level? And it's not just Leaving Cert higher level, it's Leaving Cert in general. And even the junior certs, you're the same. You can type it in as well because it's the same for you. It's not quite as difficult. It's not quite as dramatic for the junior cert kids as it is for the Leaving Cert. But, it's the same kind of ballpark. So Ashling here is on the 22nd of January. Like, that's not far away. You're back to school on the 8th of January. So basically, you're talking 3 weeks when you come back. So the 22nd of January, oh no, there's Mita's here and she's 2 weeks after they go back. So basically, We got 2 weeks after they go back, 3 weeks after they go back. A lot of people are January 30th, January 29th, end of January. And then 3 weeks for Sophie, 1st of February. Because the Ella there is 29th of January. So there's an awful lot of students who are 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks after they return to school and they start their exams. Now, the mocks are completely different in different schools, every sort of scenario possible. Some people get the full proper exam, sit it in school, full 2 papers, and send it off for corrections. Other people, their teachers make the exams, they chop and change every sort of scenario. But from the randomized group of 145 students in 2022, you can see the results. They basically found the pre's really hard. If I showed you the same scenario from 2023, it would be exactly the same. If I show you the same scenario from 2024, it will be exactly the same. That students find the mock results, the mock exams, just much harder than the real exam. There is no comparison in the grades, except for they're like an inverse. Those of you who know about skewness in statistics, they're skewed the opposite way. So what is it? How does that even make sense? The students can do so badly in the mocks and so well in the exams. Well, what it is in its simplest form is this, that it is really, really hard to prepare properly for your mock exams. It's almost impossible because 50% of the marks in your Leaving Cert, higher and ordinary, are for problem-solving questions. There is absolutely no way that you've spent 50% of your time practicing those Section B context and application questions at this time. Neither have my kids, Why? Because you have to, as a teacher, you must practice the skills. You have to cover the course. You cannot send them in there with no complex numbers done. You can't send them in with no theorems covered. So you have to cover all those things. And only then really can you get to the problem solving. The other thing is the problem solving, the questions overlap, the topics overlap. You look at a functions question, from section B, it's going to have functions, it's going to have differentiation, it might have integration thrown in there. So you can't really revise it properly until you've done all those. So let me ask you this question just before I flick to the next slide. If you were to estimate, so again, this can be for all students, higher level Leaving Cert, ordinary level Leaving Cert, fifth years, third years, because there's a lot of problem solving questions in the third year exam as well, the junior cycle exam. If I was to ask you, what percentage of time in class and for homework have you spent doing problem solving questions? Section B in the Leaving Cert, word-based questions. You can just type it into the chat there and I'll see what you say. Before I get to the site, the website, I'm not sure what happened to my first question. My first question disappeared here. The first questions was some questions from students. Let me just jump out of this here. There it is. There's my first question. I'm not sure why it's not showing up on the screen. But the first question was, how do you study math? So I sent out that survey just beforehand. Let me throw it into the chat one more time for people who just came in lately. If you want to fill in that little survey, you'll get a chance to input some questions, and I get a bit of feedback from you as well. But here, let me just say this, right? In answer to the question, how much time do students have they spent doing problem solving? Like Rhiannon saying 10%, Tanara saying 15%, Sarah saying 10, Emer's up there at 40, almost zero, says Serjan. There's, between 0 and 5, says one student who has learned his inequalities and has typed it very nicely. So in fairness, okay, some students have spent quite a decent amount, 40% plus, but a lot of people are 10% and less. And that is very typical, right? That's not unusual. And again, I'm not, there's no one at fault there. It's just the nature of the course. Let me go through these. So you can see the difficulty. You have a massive course to cover. 50% is problem solving. You got to cover the skills first. So with all that in mind, let's try and answer some of the questions put in by students. How do you study maths? Well, I've been teaching now almost 20 years. Seems amazing that I'm saying it, almost 20 years. In that time, I've seen one student, just one, out of all the students I've taught, who could teach himself maths. He just knew it. He knew it before I taught it, you know? He just could, it was just so natural to him. He just understood it and he could read the book and take it in. That's one out of thousands, you know? Absolutely everybody else, including myself, learn maths by practicing maths. You know, we learn it by doing questions. You learn a bit, of course, inside in school. The teacher shows it to you, but that's no good. Like that's like watching someone else ride a bike. You got to do it yourself. You have to practice. So the answer to almost all the questions: how do I study maths? How do I improve my confidence in maths? How do I get better at problem solving? The simple answer is practice. Of course, there's a more detailed answer than that, but that is the simple one. How do you study it? If you're a second year student, if you're a third year student, if you're a second year student particularly, or fifth year student, I would say the best thing to do is study from your textbook, right? Second and fifth year. What you do is you take your textbook, you cover the worked solutions, you do out the question and you look at it. See, is your answer right? The reason you do that is because if you're wrong, you will see where you went wrong. You won't just see just simply that you went wrong. Okay. So for any student, but second and fifth years particularly, that's a good way of revising all your basics. Okay. Now, for the fifth year student who might say, well, I use exam papers. The problem with using exam papers for fifth year students and second year students is that oftentimes a topic like algebra could still have functions thrown in there, could still have calculus. So that can throw people off. So I wouldn't use the exam papers very much in fifth year for students. For sixth year students, from now on, it's almost all exam papers. You practice the exam papers over and over. Okay. Of course, you can practice old pre's as well. Brilliant. But there is a difference between the pre's and the leaving cert in time in terms of the questions that come up. So once the mocks are over, really, I would be looking at just making sure every exam paper, every state exam paper, that's what I would focus on. Okay, so that answers the second question. Should I use my exam papers or my textbook to practice questions? So second year, fifth years, you're using your textbook. You're practicing all the questions in there. Once you're coming into third year and coming into sixth year, you're moving towards the exam papers. And as you're getting later on in sixth year and third year, you're doing exam papers more and more. How can I improve my confidence in maths? I hear this all the time. I know it myself. Students do lack confidence at times in maths. They find it a bit difficult. They look at the student inside in class that it does come naturally to them. They're saying, "Oh God, how do they know that?" But if you are doing higher level even cert maths, you're there's nothing wrong with your maths ability, If you're sitting there on ordinary level and you're scratching your head thinking this is difficult, it is difficult. There's a load of stuff in there. So it is natural that people would find it, challenging at least. What I would say is one very interesting thing about maths is this, that it is a subject, I think, where your in confidence can improve faster than in other ones. Because if you go from a scenario from getting the answers wrong to getting the answers right, your confidence will improve very quickly. Now, how does that happen? Well, that happens by practice. But you could imagine, let's say you're a sixth year student who's struggling now, and say you're going on to a new topic, when you come back now in the first week of January. Say that chapter is statistics. And if you just get a little bit ahead of the teacher, a little bit ahead of where the class is, and then the teacher asks the question the first day back, something about kind of, what's meant by the median, and you say it's the middle value. And the teacher says correct. And if you do that every day for 5 days, you're the person answering the question right. I'm telling you, your confidence is increasing. So if you can try to get a little bit ahead, that's one thing. And then practicing all other questions, that's the next thing. What topics are the most important to revise? Well, I will tell you this. A junior cycle, you might be a bit surprised, right? Area and volume is very important in all the state exams. If you look at it, more important than you might think. At a leave insert, functions and differentiation in paper one is actually the most important one. And trigonometry in paper two is the most important one. I would suggest. How to revise for the mocks without burning out? Well, I'm going to try and show you that. Why I'm running this webinar tonight is to say to you, you probably have 2 or 3 weeks when you come back after on the 8th of January before the mocks start. In those 2 or 3 weeks, I can guarantee you the teacher is going to throw a massive pile of work at you because the teacher will be looking at the mock exam and thinking, crikey, I've got all this stuff to cover before they go in. And they say, right, boom, and they'll fly through a rake of stuff. So you're going to have to learn all that new stuff in those few weeks. There'll be very little time for actual revision. So now is the time for revision. I'm not saying that you spend loads and loads of time every day revising, but I'm saying you spend some time. You can take Christmas Day off, but you spend some time revising every day. That's what's going to avoid the burnout because you won't hit that panic scenario that sometimes students do. And you can imagine if you're hoping to get a good grade in your Leaving Cert Maths and you get a H8 in your pre, that's when the stress really kicks in. So that's what you want to avoid by doing the bit of work during the Christmas break. I struggle with problem solving questions. Any advice? I know a lot of people are in that boat. Again, if you spend 5%, 10%, 15% of your time so far doing problem solving, you are, you possibly won't be that good at it at this point. I'm going to give some advice here, which sometimes people would find controversial, right? But I have found this to be very true in the past. And my fifth year students in Hamilton High School are going to get this Christmas present. They're higher level Leaving Cert students. I think they're going to get brilliant results this time next year. And before they go for Christmas, I'm going to give them the Leaving Cert ordinary level exam papers. Why would I give them Leaving Cert ordinary level exam papers if they're that good? It's to practice the problem solving questions. It's very hard to practice the problem solving questions at Leaving Cert higher level when you're in fifth year, start to sixth year. So for those of you who struggle with them, that is what I would suggest to do. Practice differentiation, problem solving, ordinary level questions. And all of a sudden you're going to be getting those right. What's going to happen? Your confidence is going to increase. If you look then at the Leaving Cert higher level ones, you're going to find they're not actually that different, except they have some more difficult parts at the end. Okay. My difficulties, I could talk about any of these bits forever and ever. So we'll go for a quick tour of the site, right? Of the Maths Tutor. And again, if you have other pre-record stuff, like I have, my students have my own pre-record stuff, you can use them in exactly the same type of way. But this is how to do it, okay? So I asked you in the survey, how do you use, so let me just flick over here a second. Let me go to here. Okay, so that's me looking at it as a teacher. Let me show you guys. This is you looking at it. If you're a Leaving Cert student, right, fifth year, sixth year, right, this is what you see when you go in here to the site, right? You've got two options. You're looking at the full topics of Leaving Cert higher level, or you're looking at the exam prep Leaving Cert higher level. So the two main ways I see that people use it is this. So if you have, again, let me give the example. My guys have an exam this week on functions, right? These are my fifth years, right? So they can click on functions and they can see, okay, well, what is it here that I need to know? And functions is an interesting one because it's one of these really wide topics, you could kind of cover it lightly and just gloss over it as a teacher, or you could go into a massive amount of depth. So there's the introduction to functions, plotting functions. That's going to be your linear, your quadratics. What's going to be down here? We're going to have our cubics, our inequalities. So you could teach yourself all this stuff. The fiber optic company, here's a great example, right? Here is a great example. This exact question I was given to Leaving Cert higher level students today, okay? It's a Leaving Cert ordinary level question about profit. And it's not that easy. It's not that easy. So in here, if you want to practice functions, problem solving, here's your question from the Leaving Cert. Okay, so you look at that question, it's a quadratic function, it's plotting in, but I'm telling you, it ain't that easy. So, a good Leaving Cert higher level student might still get a bit stumped on it. You have your marking scheme, but of course you have your video. So you have your video talking you through it. So these are all kind of nice introductory parts. If you're Leaving Cert ordinary level student, you'd be looking at a similar screen, but it wouldn't go into this most difficult part. Okay. So then plotting functions two, you're into your cubics, you're into your exponentials, you're into your logarithmic graphs. Your interpretation of the graphs is where you're into your problem solving. And then over here, you're in your miscellaneous bits, right? These are what we call the corners of the course. These little bits that don't come up very often and maybe aren't explained that well in all the textbooks. The textbooks are very good, but some of these bits, it can be tricky. So composite functions, if I look down here, um, this again is we're doing an exam on Friday, and there's exponential functions. Here we go. So my fifth years will be doing an exam on Friday. They know there's going to be a question on bijective functions in there. Bijective functions is something, again, really hard to learn by yourself reading in a textbook. But you watch a 10-minute video on this and you're going to have a much better understanding of it. You can test yourself with the quiz, etc. And below it is a leave insert question, a part B question from a while back as well. Here's another great one, inverse of a function, right? Inverse of a function. Again, you look at a textbook and it could look so complicated because there's this weird trick where you switch the X and the Y. It's very hard to explain that in just text, just words on a page. But you watch the video on it and you go, oh yeah, that's easy. And once you got it, you got it. So you have everything there you need, right? A student who never stepped foot in school could learn the whole thing just using this. Okay. If you're looking for something, okay, and you can't figure it out, you can't find where it is, you can just type it into the search, and here we go. So the bijective function, that's our explanation of injective, surjective, bijective. Where does it bring it back to? This brings it back right back to this place again. So that's one way, okay. And you could, again, as I said, you could teach yourself the whole thing that way. What happens then more as you get closer to the exam is you're thinking about this exam prep. So we'll be talking about the exam countdown on the way running up to the leave insert. But if I look here at how a lot of students use it, they're looking at the videos for the past questions. So anyone have any particularly difficult parts for the from last year's leave insert? Anyone have a question that they remember thinking about from last year's leave insert or any other time, and they say, God, they knew they didn't get it. I see someone saying here that the code last year didn't work, right? Um, I'm not sure. We could see. Oh, the I think it is working, but if not, I'll just have another look at it here when I'm finished on this little part, and we'll see does it work. Okay, so that's the code for the course on the tuition center, right? So we'll come back to that. So the emoji one is a suggestion. The first suggestion is from last year is the emoji one. So that was a functions question. So if I scroll down here, right? So question 2, right? I just want to make sure the transformation of functions. Let me just make sure that this was the one. So that was a different one. This is a different type of functions question. There was actually a load of functions on last year's exam. So that was a different transformation of functions. Question 3, I'm looking at that as well. That was one that scared people. Yeah, it's the mapping stuff here. So it's question 5, differentiation and function. So I'll show it to you here, right? So if you look down here, right? Oh, like I'm looking at this, like that. I'm going to say 1 in 100 students could do that question, part B, right? And by the time then they got to part C, they were flummoxed, right? But if you look here at part C, I'll just see any of you. There's parents online here, there's teachers online here, there's third year students online, fifth year students. Type in if you think you can answer the question there. It says find the value of g of f of 3. Okay, and obviously there's all the description there of what everything is. But if I just look at it and say, well, find the value of g after f of 3, see what you think the answer would be. So this was a question it was on the newspaper a lot last year, right? People saying, what were those emojis? doing inside in the Leaving Cert Maths exam. And to tell you the truth, this was question 5. And by the time people got here, they were really, they were really under pressure because a lot of the questions were just a bit unusual, right? But the people, I have this little catchphrase, right? I say it all the time to my students. If you don't know what to do what you know. If you don't know what to do what you know. Okay. And so many students told me last year that just was rattling around their head all the time during that paper one. If you don't know what to do what you know. So you got to do something. So you're looking down at here, you got set A, set B, set C. And what happened was you're saying, okay, it says G after F of 3. So if you just look and say, well, there's 3. Okay, what's 3 going to? Well, the function F is taking 3 to the world, and then function G is taking the world to W. The answer was W. Simple as that, nothing else, right? To a certain extent, it kind of couldn't be anything else. And yeah, all you guys have the answer right, so well done. I know some people they've got W and the question mark in saying they're not sure. Well, that was it, right? So when you look at the marking scheme, sure, it looks simple. The answer is W. Inside in the exam, people have never seen it before, they're thrown. But if you're looking at the mark, if you're looking at your exam papers and you don't know how to do it, you're studying for the pre's. Well, here you go. You got the question, you got the marking scheme. Let me show you the marking scheme. But the main thing is you got the video. You got the video solution. See, that's the answer. The answer is just, okay, F of 3 brings you to the world and G of the world brings you to W, but all you had to say was W. And of course, then you got the video. So you got the video for every single question that ever came up. Do you know what I mean? All the way back to the 2010 pre-exams for this new syllabus. So that is, in a nutshell, the most simple kind of breakdown of how to use it. Okay, you can teach yourself anything that's on the course, okay, but you can also practice all the exam paper questions that ever came up. So that's pretty good, isn't it? Now, if you are doing the junior cycle, or if you're the parent of a junior cycle student, if they're in second year, they could be well doing the CBA, just after Christmas. If that is you, the CBA Hub is absolutely brilliant. The CBA Hub, if you're a parent, particularly of a second year student, and you don't have any idea how they're meant to do the CBA Hub will just talk you through it. It'll get you started. It'll give you the ideas of what to do, and if you watch and go through all that material, you'll be away. If you are a third year student, here we are, junior cert higher level, same idea. You got the full topics, so you can teach yourself anything you want, and you got all the exam paper questions. Again, even if you're a fifth year student, this is a key thing, right? If you're a fifth year student, you were in first year when COVID struck, you would have been learning the beginnings of algebra right around that time. Equations, expressions, solving problems, factorizing, all those things. I can bet any money that loads of fifth years struggle at algebra because in the end of first year and the start of second year, which are so crucial for it, it was all messed up because of COVID. So if fifth year students went through all the exercises back here in the junior cycle thing, it would be a great use of everyone's time. However, I know the reality as much as everyone else. It's hard to do it, isn't it? It's hard to do it because it's like you could be doing all this other stuff, and I do understand that. No, okay. I see a few more questions here. I'm going to try and answer these, right? So let me just, I will throw this open to the floor now, basically, because in a nutshell, I'm just going to recap here. In a nutshell, if I was to give the key messages from this, and then I will answer as many questions as people have, and I'll stay on here for as long as people have questions. I would say to you that, number one, in general, all students are behind where their equals would have been in 2019. So if you were leaving cert 2020, you would have been in the September 2019, Leaving Cert 2020, it didn't happen. But anyway, but in the September 2019, they were ahead of where you are. And the reason is because COVID hadn't happened. And COVID just knocked everyone back. It's just the way, right? So that's number one. Everyone is a little bit behind where teachers would expect them to be at this particular time. It's very hard to catch up, very, very difficult to catch up in school because there's all sorts of factors slowing down the momentum in schools. Students been out, teachers been out. If a teacher has a cold, you know, they're kind of not expected to go in now if they're coughing at the top of the room, nobody wants to see the person coughing and coughing and coughing. So, it's a different world now. So there's all sorts of factors causing it to slow down a little bit in schools. So it's very hard to catch up that gap. But the exam is as hard as ever. The mocks are as hard as ever. And the mocks are only a few weeks away. So the Christmas break is the time just to try to get going, try to get a little bit ahead. Okay. If you can turn the corner and start going from a scenario where you're getting questions wrong to getting them right, your confidence is going to improve in maths and the whole thing starts to come together. Okay, so how do you do it? Well, I think the maths tutor is just a brilliant platform to do it because you can teach yourself any particular bit you're stuck on and you can use it to practice all the past papers. So that's what you do. Question comes in about like how exactly, how much exactly? Well, look, during the Christmas break, if you put in an hour, if you put in an hour a week into the an hour a week, an hour a day. So I'm looking at questions coming through here. An hour a day into your maths. Well, that would be a good start. Of course you could do more, but you have other subjects as well. But I'd say an hour a day would be a good target for maths. Okay. Um, a question has came in here just from one of my own students on the tuition center. So a grind student. The answer is yes. My own grind students do have free access to the Maths Tutor platform. Okay. So, just in case if anyone didn't get that email or maybe got it and didn't look at it at the time back along in September when maybe it didn't look quite as important, you'll get that email again. We'll send that email out again tomorrow about how you can access everything. Okay. So that is the main thing. Okay. So if students find that they can't get themselves to do this study, let me ask the students, you can fire this into chat. Okay. I think it's fair to say that a lot of students would know they want to do this study over Christmas. But are there any of you here who feel that you just might not get yourself to do it? Is there anyone in that boat who I won't mention the names, but they're flying in here, Joe? And some of them I even know them, Joe. So there's loads of people, yeah, and if I said, well, why? So there's loads of people saying, yeah, that's me. And one person is saying they will find it hard to revise the subjects they don't like. Another person says it's hard to fit everything in. And I get it. I get it. It's just hard to fit everything in. It's absolutely true. You know, like you guys are here on this webinar tonight. A whole host of other people aren't. So like you guys are here. So like you're ahead of so many more. Another person says, I don't know where to start. And that is so common, right? So I understand all those things, right? Now, if you don't know where to start, I will just say start somewhere, start anywhere, start at the basics. The phrase, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. That's the same thing. The maths course is an elephant. It's absolutely massive. It's one bite at a time. Just pick something. And I'm going to say to that student, if you had to just pick one place to start with differentiation because it's going to come up in a short question. It's going to come up in a long question. It's going to come up in paper one. It's going to come up in paper two. It's going to come up everywhere. If you've done that, go on to trigonometry in paper two. I will go through one other